I would say that the European Union's current crisis is a perfect illustration of why the liberal international order is over. Remember, it's precisely one of these institutions that Fareed has held up as an example of what can work. But the truth is, it isn't working. And that's one reason why a majority of British voters opted to leave the EU. I was very ambivalent about Brexit last year, but I came to realize why so many people in Britain felt that way. They felt that way because they discerned that in two fundamental respects, the European Union had become dysfunctional. It wholly mismanaged the financial crisis, massively amplifying the negative impacts on the other member states of the European Monetary Union. Britain felt very relieved not to be a part of that. And then it massively mismanaged the migration crisis caused by a crisis in North Africa and the Middle East, which the European Union had a hand in causing, although European politicians like to pretend the migration crisis is a sort of natural disaster. But at every level, the most basic roles that we expect a state to perform, from economic management to the defense of borders, were flunked comprehensively by the European Union over the last 10 years. And the British response was, we need to take back control. That's a really important idea here, because control by sovereign states is vital if they are to retain legitimacy. What's scary in Europe is to see populists gaining strength from the failure of Fareed's beloved international institutions. And that's the argument I'm trying to make tonight. If you're complacent, as Fareed, I'm afraid to say, has become, in your elite bubble on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, imagining that everything is awesome, and going to Sweden to another bubble there, and then presumably to a bubble in London, you don't realize how disaffected ordinary people in the provinces are, in peripheral France, in the provincial parts of Central and Eastern Europe that have swung sharply away from your liberal international order. That's the trouble. The populism that Fareed alludes to is not something I'm here to legitimize or defend. My point is precisely that it's a symptom of what is malfunctioning in this liberal international order. And I think ultimately the European Union will fall apart because it's simply not possible to pursue a monetary policy for an entire continent and have borderless travel for an entire continent. It's not compatible with the stability and legitimacy of the nation states themselves. And the Brits have just been the first to realize that.
Fareed, let's have you come in on that. In effect, Europe is the canary in the coal mine, and it's close to death.
I'm so glad that Niall is mingling with the people in Palo Alto, where my home would probably buy you a garage. But I think it's important to remember the history here when we talk about the European Union. For the 400, 500 years before World War II, Europe was racked by wars the kind of which almost no continent had ever seen before. The religious wars, for example, 1/3 of all of Germany was killed. France and Germany went to war 3 times between 1850 and 1950, dragged the world in on 2 of those occasions. And when you look at the European Union today, the principal achievement is that it is unthinkable that these countries that routinely went to war for hundreds of years will ever go to war again. Yes, they have problems about border control, and yes, when they meet, they have debates about monetary policy, and oh yes, it's very difficult to have monetary policy move in one direction and fiscal policy move in another. It's a very different world from Germany invading France, Belgium, from the horrors of World War I, World War II, and all the wars before that. So I look at the European Union, and I know it's fashionable to decry it and to talk about the bureaucracy and to talk about the sclerosis, but it is an extraordinary achievement of political and economic cooperation that should be a model for all countries in the world. That is how we want to solve problems. That is how we should. And those great liberal internationalists of the 1900s, Norman Angell and such, did not predict, by the way, perpetual peace. Norman Angell's book did not say there would be peace forever. He said that a war within Europe would be so costly that it would make no sense economically to wage it, that the victor would lose economically so much by plunging the continent into chaos that it wouldn't be worth the candle. He was proven absolutely right in that because of the interdependence that had been achieved by this order.